Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the third Spark by Go Studio Startup Demo Day powered by Plug and Play. We are hosting today's session at Emory University's Center for Innovation at the Hatchery, which is where students and entrepreneurs can find support and resources to learn, prototype, build, and launch their ideas. Now, I'm Jenna Banks, and I am thrilled to be your Master of Ceremonies today. Now, if you're familiar with our events, you probably realize that this is the first time we have held one in the afternoon, right? Now, we appreciate you rolling with our time change, and if this is your first time at one of our events, welcome. Our team is proud of the speakers, demonstrators, and insights we've lined up, and if you have feedback afterwards, we'd love to know about it. We want this series to serve you. Spark by Go Studio is a motivational and educational series of events focusing on innovation and real-world use cases for emerging technologies. Today's topic is sparking AI security and cybersecurity's future. So let's gear up for an exploration of the tools and trends that are dominating the headlines today, and more importantly, how they may evolve and impact your organization in the years ahead. Now, we'll be joined shortly by our keynote speaker, an expert in AI security, compliance, and strategy, to delve into this very captivating topic. Now, afterwards, we'll hear from 4 startups working on cutting edge of AI-powered safeguarding technology. By the end of this afternoon, you will learn the difference between AI security and AI for security, and why they are both important. But before we get going, I'd like to share some background on our host, Go Studio, and our partner, Plug and Play. Now, first, let's begin with a brief introduction of Go Studio and InComm Payments. Now, for those who aren't familiar with InComm Payments, we are a global leader in innovation payment solutions. Leveraging dynamic technology and proven expertise, InComm Payments delivers results that help businesses grow across a wide variety of industries. Go Studios is InComm Payments' in-house innovation center with consultant services to solve clients' unique challenges. With a diverse team of highly skilled professionals, we focus on emerging technology solutions for today, tomorrow, and the future. As markets and strategies evolve, Go Studio delivers world-class services and support to help grow a client's business and meet our consumers' needs. And now, I would like to introduce Nate Hinman, Director of Enterprise and AI, to share about Plug and Play.
Awesome. Thank you, Jenna. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Hatchery. We're very excited and grateful to have you all here to talk about AI and cybersecurity. One of the verticals that we have at Plug and Play is actually covering enterprise AI and the security aspects of that. We've lined up a great show for you today, and we'd like to give special thanks to you and the startups, as well as the panelists for being here, as well as the Go Studio team. So thank you, Michael, Billy, and the rest of the team. At Plug and Play, we run this type of collaboration in the name of innovation. For those of you who are not familiar with us, we're a global innovation platform working with around 600 corporations, helping them identify, evaluate, and adopt emerging technology through direct sourcing. Our accelerator programs cover 25 different industries, and we're in about 65 different locations around the world, opening about 10 offices per year. Our programs are stage agnostic. They're entirely free for entrepreneurs. We don't take any equity. If they find business as a result of our introductions, then that money goes straight to them. So there's no revenue share. Our programs are really designed to help early stage startups with mentorship, funding, and ultimately go-to-market customers. Our corporate innovation services are designed to assist corporate innovation teams, CVC teams, M&A teams, product teams in finding disruptive technology for their industry or for a specific use case they may have. Through Plug and Play and our Playbook database, our partners gain access to an ecosystem of over 90,000 startups, which range from pre-seed through unicorn now. In Atlanta specifically, we work with InComm, Aflac, Georgia Pacific, Wellstar, Westrock, Coca-Cola, and more. We hope to have an office here soon as well. over 200 investment professionals focused on our various different industries. They essentially act as an extension to our partners, scouting and sourcing capabilities when it comes to finding new technology. And so they're constantly helping our partners across these 25 different industries find new solutions that are developed.
Hey, let's give it up for Nate. All right. When talking about AI, we must consider both its functionality to aid the security of our established systems and the need to secure our AI systems. Now, in our last speaker series event last summer, we touched on the topic of quantum computing and security, learning that we are still quite far from quantum computing breaking through our current systems. However, there are other internal and external threats that can crack through our systems. So, how do we properly prioritize security needs while also considering compliance? That is the cue for our keynote speaker, Dan Ross, head of AI compliance strategy at Dynamo AI, focused on aligning AI, policy, risk management, and business application. Now, prior to Dynamo, Dan spent close to a decade at Promontory Financial Group, which is a premier risk and regulatory advisory firm focused on data and technology risk. He has also held technology strategy and management consulting positions at Deutsche Bank, Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, and Accenture. So, without further ado, let's join Dan and delve into the intersection of AI security and AI for security.
Thank you, Jenna. Great. Well, thank you, Jenna, for that warm introduction. Really appreciate it. Also want to thank Incom, Go Studios, and the Plug and Play team for this wonderful event that we've got here today. And think it's also really fitting that it's happening on a university campus. So as we look at innovation coming from a wonderful facility here, so want to thank Emory University as well. And also thinking about where we are in this year, in the next 11 months, really setting a foundation for considerations around AI security and AI for security. And so I'm hopeful that the innovations that we're going to see today and the technologies are really setting a little bit of that threshold and then tune going forward. And it's been, I think, a relatively loud start to the year, and I don't know how other folks think about that, especially in the AI space, the AI investment space, policy and risk management space. Just a lot of movement. So clearly an AI innovation in the past week and what we've seen on that front. On the policy and regulatory front, what we're hearing across the pond, as well as changing landscape of regulations and risk management. So really just a lot to intake. So I think today is hopefully a chance for us to sit back, really set ourselves in the thresholds and get a sense of where we're going collectively, and then we can all be part of that conversation. Let me see if we've got the next slide. Nope. Here we go. Okay. So Jenna mentioned a little bit about my background. I've had the privilege, always from a risk management, data tech, risk, and cyber perspective, to work and evaluate some of the largest institutions, small institutions, governments, even religious entities. From a risk management perspective. And probably like a lot of folks in the audience, I've been privileged with a lot of wonderful mentors over the years. And one of my mentors specifically was a really sweet lady with a great Southern accent that I think if you saw her at a Cracker Barrel or something, you wouldn't necessarily know that she had 30 years of experience as one of the strongest bulldogs in financial regulatory environments. Really a strong set around data, technology, and cyber risk, and had a number of perspectives on that. And so I learned a lot from her. But one of the things that she always said and did, especially during, I'd say, moments of tension when we were meeting with stakeholders and senior management around cybersecurity risks, is she'd always kind of diffuse the situation and talk about the fact that she felt all the themes from a security perspective really haven't changed that much in her day, and she was kind of just dealing with some of those same themes. And she would bring up this story of really, from her days as a junior regulator, maybe walking the streets of West Texas, and going around and evaluating things like security bank vaults, that those themes haven't really changed in the security front. We're just dealing with new venues and new technology. So I don't really know how I think about that. I think things have merged, but what I did do to kind of kick us off is look back at some of the old OCC guidance, so that's the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, to look at some of the themes in the actual security evaluations they did back then. And I think when we can all kind of be the judge in terms of whether that is still prevalent today. And so I've got a few of them up here. First one being things like structural integrity. So they would go around and look at the vault and say, how was the vault melded? What was the material, the structure of the building and surrounding it? So that's really about infrastructure, architecture evaluation. They also looked at things like the locking mechanism. So looking at how the locking mechanism worked. And importantly, and we'll talk about this, they had independent audits of the locking mechanism, to come in and validate whether it really works and stuff like that. Fire and disaster resistance, so the material that was used. They'd really assess the material and whether it could withstand a bomb or an internal fire. And then things like surveillance in the environment surrounding the safe. So I think they actually walked around the block. They'd look to see, could a truck jump into the front of the bank? Could it run through the back? How close is the nearest jail? All these questions were actually part of the security evaluation. And then things like operational security, and I tend to think of those old Disney cartoons where you have the bank guard asleep at night, right? They'd interview the staff, right, from a training and evaluation perspective. And they'd say, is this guy up to the job? So she would tell the story, and these themes would come across. And I think it's a little bit for us to say whether they're still relevant. I certainly think we're going to see a number of themes where we've moved from there. But nonetheless, they're still relatively prevalent today, and I think she had a relatively good point in sort of setting the stage here. So let's get into it. So a few things what we're going to do here. One, I want to set the tone in terms of basic principles around AI security and AI for security, and I want to talk about some of the core components involved in that. I'm also going to spend a little time, just a little bit of review on policymaker and congressional feedback that we're hearing, as well as considerations for risk management. And then we'll kind of close with some interesting tidbits about some of the upcoming 2025 risk concerns as we go into that. And so hopefully give you kind of a holistic view, and as you're looking at some of the innovations later today, be able to feel comfortable with those assessments. And so being the economist that I am, I want to, of course, kick us off with a quote by Theodore Levitt, a German economist, really just highlighting what we're going to see here today, which is the fact that creativity is thinking up new things, but innovation is doing new things. So, really just powering our awesome economy, where we're seeing real forward movement on trends and controls that we can apply today. And then channeling, I guess, my wife, who every time we go into the new ice cream store that she loves, is really we're in for a treat today, which is definitely true when we're seeing new technology. So, AI security versus AI for security. I think there's probably no better way than to look at this from a defense imperative perspective and see the quote from General Parr Nakasone. And there's a couple of things I want to point out here as we go through fundamentals of AI security. So the general says that AI security is about protecting AI systems from learning, doing, and revealing the wrong thing. It's a set of practices to protect AI systems and life cycles from digital attacks, theft, and damage. We must build a robust understanding of AI vulnerabilities, foreign intelligence threats to these systems, and ways to encounter the threat in order to have AI security. We must also ensure that malicious foreign actors can't steal America's innovative capabilities to do so. So there's 4 elements there that I just want to point out from an AI control perspective. One's a set of practices. So these are best practices. These are standards. These are inventories of evaluations that are shared amongst constituents, so private, public sector considerations. Also, he talks about building a robust understanding of AI vulnerabilities. So the threat environment and the landscape, which is emerging and changing. There's also discussion of ways to counter the threat. So these are our controls. And some of the new innovations in tech we're going to see are controls to apply to assess against your inherent risk. And then finally, the general talks about stealing innovative capabilities. And I think this is a little bit where things like AI for security come into play. So, going on a couple of themes here: AI security, securing AI from cyber threats, we'll speak about, and then AI for security is the element of using AI to enhance a security's posture. Let's dive into 4 components of AI security to help kind of set the tone. I think it's also important, we have a really broad swath of folks here today. So we've got professors, research students, we have folks in industry and cybersecurity applications. So I think it's great to kind of narrow around these topics. One is around AI observability. So you can see the monitoring and continuing analysis of insight. And actually, on observability, there was a great piece of work that I think was on a podcast that the Pentagon put out recently about all of their landscapes and essentially how they want to apply AI across the supply chain and the battle openness landscape to pull in tons and tons of data to be able to assess basically and make decisions to have decision dominance. But you can think about what that does from the importance of an AI observability perspective to ensure security and control that you're making the right decisions with the right data you're getting back. AI safety and security. So that's both a little bit what we talked about of securing the AI environment, but also things like safety, so the ethics principles around that. And those are created by governments, companies, cultures, and society that put in principles that they feel comfortable with that they can then validate and test against. AI validity is around ensuring essentially that the product and the system works as intended. I kind of tend to think about this as the locking mechanism that we talk about. And then AI for security, really as the landscape changes and gets more advanced, using AI to mitigate against threats. So stepping back a little bit, it's going to be a great year, and I thought it would be helpful to give a little bit of perspective on both what we're hearing from Congress and policymakers, and then compare that to also what we're hearing from risk management experts from an application perspective. And so there's a couple of points here that we'll go. One is it's clear that our policymakers are still getting up to speed with the use and application of AI more effectively. I think in a lot of different sectors, including the financial services sector, a lot of inquiries were put out around protective use and how systems were using AI, and that was validated. Also on getting up to speed, when we meet and have the honor of meeting with a number of congressional representatives, they're getting up to speed themselves. So I know a great Virginia congressman who I think he's maybe late 70s, early 80s, who's going to machine learning class during the middle of the week. And another South Carolina representative who has a master's in cybersecurity. So they're trying to understand the fundamentals too, and they want to have that debate with companies and with the federal government around effective use. So they're gaining their skills. I suspect that'll continue. Secondly, it's the concept of national imperative being discussed heavily. So not just both on the federal side, but also national imperative of the importance of AI embedded within our critical organizations and institutions to protect against consumer or physical harm. So those are things like recognizing the fact that AI security programs at large enterprises or medium and small enterprises all have the ability to invest and secure because that impacts US policy and folks. And then federal investment's a discussion as well. How much investment for risk reward is enough? On the risk management legal compliance element, I'll touch upon that. So these are practitioners, folks thinking about data risk, technology risk, cyber risk, model risk. Their journey's a little bit different in that they're the receiver of some of the policy. So a couple things there. There's been a lot of great best practice that's been produced in the security space. So you think about what NIST has come out with, or the OECD, looking to see the EU AI Act, also things like OWASP. And what they're looking is to understand really what are the metrics and reports and evidence that we can give and deliver to the board, our stakeholders and our management. So great that we have all these policies, but how do we really effectively evaluate and do the reporting? And so that battle's being fought as well on the validation evidence front. And actually, it's interesting there, in a tidbit, so the Securities and Exchange Commission, one of the larger regulators in the market space for financial services, came out with cybersecurity regulation. And they required in their update that in their 10K report for any company, you have to describe your cybersecurity strategy. which is actually pretty fascinating because if you think about it, you're kind of opening kimono your strategy so that investors and folks with dollars can basically vouch and feel comfortable about what you're building, which was, I thought, a very unique and new move. The other thing on validation and evidence, I'll say, is TPRM, third-party risk management. For varying levels, this is a longer discussion, where you have institutions both more reliant on third parties for a variety of reasons. Also, you're seeing embedded AI pop up in very different areas, becoming much more of a focus to get effective controls. Risk reward, so both looking at things like residual and inherent risks and getting a sense of whether the controls are applicable, looking at AI security risks and including that in use case risk assessments about how best to use AI and whether those are applicable. On the risk and reward front, I'm from New York, and our financial regulator there, the Department of Financial Services, came out with cybersecurity regulation as well, where they mandate an understanding of your funding models for cybersecurity, as well as things like your training and what your training plan is. And so, again, another open kimono move on strategy that they want to see. And then finally, concepts of obligation and liability. I think folks have probably seen a lot in the news around personal liability as a discussion point within the cybersecurity space. AI governance strategies are still being developed. There's a lot of focus on formality and enhancement to understand who owns what piece of the pie as this extends. So a couple of growing AI risks in the back of our mind. I think a couple of these we talked about, AI-driven cyber attacks, broader adversarial attacks growing the threat landscape that are getting more relevant and more targeted. I don't know if we've all seen some of the phishing accounts. Shadow data privacy risks dealing with regulation. Two elements I'll touch upon here. One, shadow AI. So very similar to the concept of shadow IT. This is really use of AI that's really unsanctioned within the use of a corporate or like corporate environment. So you could think about the implications of using your phone and AI to write technology or putting information around your company to help write you a memo or to ask questions that are sensitive in nature or revealing your private type of information. Those are concerns that are generally convincing a lot of folks across the community. I don't really see a silver bullet here yet. There's a lot of discussion on governance, guardrails, effective monitoring, but that conversation is growing as the embedded AI apps kind of take over every space that we look at. And then physical safety concerns. So real quickly, I don't know if everybody's taken a Waymo out in San Francisco. If you have a chance to do it, it's great. But if you think about the risks and the threats and the ability to poison information and data and what that means, it's quite amazing. This year was very focused on consumer harm. I think you move to the physical harm realm when you start to think about the application decision-making of AI in that context. And that certainly keeps us awake at night. So I'll leave you with another picture of a vault. I think this one's a little bit thicker and bigger, so a little more area. But I don't know if I necessarily agree with the themes going through there. I think we've talked about a lot of advancements that put through it. But really excited to see the technology today. This is what it's all about and what the application. And look forward to chatting with everybody after the session. So thank you.
Thank you, Dan. So that was certainly insightful, wasn't it? So now let's take this knowledge and connect it to its application. Up next, we are going to see demos from 4 emerging AI security and AI for security startups and their take on AI observability, security, validity, and security enhanced by AI. So sit back, relax, and jot down your questions because we will have Q&A at the end of each demo, okay? Now, first up, we have Abel Morales. Now, Abel is a principal security engineer based here in Atlanta, Georgia, and he's the principal security engineer at Witness AI. Prior to Witness AI, Abel built over 10 years of experience in information security with companies such as Verizon, Cineverse, McKinsey, and Intercontinental Exchange, which is the NYSE. Now, as a practitioner, he was responsible for managing incidents, performing technical analysis, and communicating with audiences of various levels. He received a BS degree in information technology and an MBA from Kennesaw State University. He is passionate about threat hunting, digital forensics, and incident response. He holds industry certifications such as CISSP, GHIH, and MCSA. Okay, Abel, it's all yours. Let's give it up for Abel.
Thank you. Good afternoon. So thank you so much for the introduction. Thank you, Go Studio and Income, for hosting us. Appreciate you guys all attending, and hopefully this will be a very insightful review of our platform and what we're doing to address some of the concerns around AI. So just to give you a little bit of context, Witness AI has been around for about 2 years. Currently, we're backed by Google Ventures, Ballistic Ventures, and General Nakasone is actually one of our board members. So we have been, having conversations with tons of different cybersecurity leaders and have some insightful information to share with you guys of some of the concerns that a lot of organizations have in relation to access to AI. Our whole thought within Witness AI is that we want to ensure that our organizations and our customers have the ability to adopt AI safely and effectively. One of the things that we believe is that AI is such a transformative technology that a lot of organizations should be able to adopt. And it's going to help put a competitive edge over some of their competitors to be able to innovate much faster and become more effective. Our conversations over the last year, 2 years, with tons of different CISOs and cybersecurity leaders is that they have 3 kind of different approaches to the way that they address access to AI. One of the approaches is the crawl, walk, and run approach. This is where they're creating administrative policies in place or working with maybe legal, the privacy team, and other teams within the organization to establish some type of policy and how their users should utilize AI. The next one is some of these organizations that we've talked to are currently in the dark. They don't really understand what type of access exists within the organization. As kind of the previous speaker mentioned, shadow AI is a big portion of that. A lot of them have zero visibility into what access exists. How many users today really understand what access they have to these different projects? Are they currently using things like DeepSeek? Everyone's heard about the big increase in interest with DeepSeek over the last week or so. The last one is the approach of let's block access to all AI. And this actually puts you in a bit of a competitive disadvantage. This approach is where you're blocking access to all AI projects, all public LLMs, through the network, whether it's through your CASB, your proxy, or through the firewall. I think based on all the concerns that we've seen with AI, we all believe and understand that guardrails are needed to protect access to AI. Think of it this way. You have a powerful engine, and we are the brakes and the steering wheel behind that engine to ensure that there's some type of safety net to ensure secure access and effective and safe usage of AI. From the employee side, we understand employees are uploading all different types of information that could be considered sensitive, whether it's things like API keys, IP addresses, passwords, all getting uploaded to these public LLMs. On the other side, there's also the concern of the customer-facing chatbots. I don't know if any of you have heard this story. I think most of you have. One story that I'd love to talk about is about the Chevy dealership out in California that decided to publish a chatbot for the customers to be able to use. Publicly facing, within an hour, it was jailbroken. Someone was able to convince it to sell them a Chevy Tahoe 2024 for $1, no takesy backsies. So we understand there's tons of different concerns, and there's so many other stories around the need for AI protection to make sure there's some type of guardrail in place. So the next part, I'd like to spend the next few minutes just going through an actual demo so you can see some real runtime and some of the actual use cases that we're solving. So this is our secure AI portal, one of the ways that we deploy. This is completely brandable. You can put your organization's logo on the upper left. And this is a way for your users to have some type of authorized portal to access LLMs. As you can see here in this demo, I have a few different models that I'm integrated with, currently integrated with OpenAI and Grok as well. and certain models. We support a whole bunch of different ones, whether you're using private LLMs or you're using a public LLM. If you're using like Azure OpenAI, we can absolutely integrate with it, no issue. One of the guardrails I'm going to cover that we have today is our data protection guardrail. This is to ensure that data that is considered sensitive, such as the social security number, where I'm writing a contract between me and my sales counterpart, this data should not make it up to the public LLM. We don't want social security numbers, data that could be sensitive, going up to things like OpenAI and ChatGPT. So you can see here, I have a warning that we've created, possible sensitive data. We can absolutely block it if needed. But in this case, we don't necessarily want to block it. We want to ensure that our customers have the ability to continue using AI without this data getting leaked. So what we're doing is we're actually tokenizing this data. You can see there that there's a template within the social security numbers for both myself and my sales counterpart. However, the user themselves receive this full contract back with the social security numbers that were originally put into the input. Now, from the cybersecurity side, you have some confidence that this data is not getting leaked because we're sending a tokenized version of that prompt over to OpenAI or some other LLM that you're integrated with. The other use case around here is things like API keys, driver's license numbers, passport numbers. There's tons of different types of data that you would want to be able to protect. We're also very flexible in the sense that you can create your own custom regexes to be able to protect that type of data. Now, the second guardrail that I'd like to cover is our guardrail that focuses on behavior. So one of the things that we really focus on is intention. We can derive intention from every single prompt that a user is inputting to the LLM. So in this case here, I'm going to ask it, what is the best medicine to get rid of a migraine very quickly? I actually had a guardrail in place that said nothing about health-related questions should be asked to an AI. And as you can see here, we're able to derive the intention and put a warning in place to let the end user know that this is something that's prohibited. You can absolutely block it if you'd like. It's all up to your discretion. Or if you just want to add a warning, it's something that you have the ability to do. There's other use cases around this. So if you only want like your legal team to only ask questions to the LLM about writing a contract or reviewing a contract, you can absolutely put those guardrails in place for those specific teams in your organization. One of the other guardrails that we'll showcase here is our guardrail around around model protection. Model protection is really focused on things like jailbreaks, kind of the use case that we talked about where that chatbot, that Chevy dealership got jailbroken. And one of the things that you'll see, I'll put in a basic prompt injection here just to showcase what we're doing. However, one thing to keep in mind is we're actually going to block this specific prompt. Now, from an ROI perspective, some of our customers are seeing a lot of value in that. Because what happens is that when we block the actual prompt from making it to the LLM, that means your LLM is not processing that input, which means you don't incur any additional costs. So if you're thinking of this from a ROI perspective, this is now becoming what we would say this is analogous to what SQL injection was back 10 years ago. Now anyone that can write anything in natural language, they can come into any chatbot and then create some type of prompt injection. You can role play with it. You can do various things to try to get the LLM to respond in different ways that it's not intended to do. The other portion of what I will showcase, and kind of what the previous speaker also mentioned, was around observability. So all these conversations that are happening here are getting logged. We're able to showcase and give you that kind of digital forensics. As my experience, these are data points that you would want to have. If you have a request, what did someone do 6 months ago with an LLM? You have all this data that you're able to collect and share to analyze what kind of data they potentially may have exfiltrated out to a public LLM. All right, and so for now, this is kind of what I did want to showcase to you guys with the Secure AI portal. There's other portions of the product that we're able to kind of go over on a separate session, but if there's any questions, we'd love to hear your questions.
Great presentation, by the way. Thank you. Great presentation.
Thank you.
Yes. So of all this value that you're creating for companies to protect AI systems, how do you quantify that value and put it into a pricing strategy that customers understand?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. I'll give you an example of just one of the use cases that we're working on. So we have an organization, about 50,000 employees, and they're looking to adopt Office 365 Copilot. The license cost for that is anywhere between $25 to $40 a month. So it's very expensive per user. So what they're doing is they're doing a trial with Office 365 or with Microsoft and handing out these licenses to understand what the usage looks like. So what they're doing with us is they're using us as that observability platform to understand, are we seeing 2 queries per month by this user? Does that really quantify a license? Maybe I can reduce my licensing from 50,000 employees down to maybe just a subset of 1,000. And right there, you have tremendous value in cost savings from there. Any other questions or?
Thank you for the presentation. I saw your demo is connect to the GPT-4o, right? It's via the internet connections. How about deploy the model on your old computers? Do you see any similar issue if we deploy on our old machine?
So you can deploy on your own machine. So we have different ways of integrating. If this is a self-hosted solution, like let's say you're hosted in AWS or Amazon, very easy to integrate over the network via API. The other way to do this is if you have your own internal model that you've developed, it's hosted locally on your computer, and you have some type of chatbot, you can actually make API calls. We have a couple of API endpoints that you would call. You would get both the input and the response back, and then we process every single input and response to apply these guardrails.
Thank you.
We have another one over here. So you mentioned you worked with Copilot. How do you integrate with organizations' infrastructures as a whole to provide visibility?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So the way that we do that is we have 3 different ways to integrate. We have things, so we have an API integration, think of like your application chatbot use case. We also have the Secure AI portal, which you guys also saw. And then the last piece is the network connector. This is where we're able to capture on the wire all these prompts and responses. So from the Office 365 perspective, think of like a thick client. You're not going to open up Chrome to access Word and Copilot. You're going to open up Word that's installed locally on your machine, and then you're going to access Word from that perspective. And that all traverses a network where we're able to inspect all that traffic and do that deep packet inspection.
Do any of the major LLMs like Llama, Bard, do they not allow for this tokenization so the information is protected when you upload it? Or all the common ones that we're aware of allowing for this?
That's a good question. So what we've seen is that it's very black box in a lot of these LLMs and what they're doing. They are doing a best effort in trying to filter this data out. For example, like social security numbers may be one of those types of data points that they would filter out. But it's kind of the same idea applies to like things like jailbreak and prompt injections. They have some type of protection in place, but that doesn't seem to be sufficient. So for example, one of the demos that I do is I will actually prompt inject OpenAI. And this is a prompt injection that's been publicly accessible over the last couple of months. They still don't have a protection available, but if we're sitting in the middle of that, we are able to actively block. So in short, we don't really understand the full depth because of their black box of what they're actually filtering out. But here, this gives you a lot more governance, a lot more control into what you're wanting to protect.
All right. Thank you so much, Abel. Let's give it up for Abel.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. What an awesome product, huh? All right. So now we're going to hear from Dor Sareg. He is the CEO and co-founder of Pillar Security. Now, Dor is an accomplished cybersecurity expert with over a decade of experience developing robust and innovative security products for Fortune 500 companies. Now, Dor's expertise spans offensive security, product development and research, honed through his work with Israel's Ministry of Defense and leading security companies like Parameter 81 and Simulate, where he led cross-functional teams to address complex cybersecurity challenges. So with that, Dor, take it away.
Thank you. Check, check. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Great. Great to be here. Thank you for the intro. Thank you for inviting us, Go Studio, Income, and Plug and Play. Very happy to be here and talk with you about Pillar. Pillar mission is to secure the AI lifecycle. And when I talk about the AI lifecycle, I'm talking about the way companies are building AI applications today. So a few words about the team behind Pillar. Pillar was founded by a group of cybersecurity professionals with decades of experience, both in offensive security, threat intelligence, product management, and AI security. It's VC-backed. Some of our investors are the former Microsoft executives that led the responsible AI in Microsoft and the security co-pilot, among others. So, I'm sure you're familiar with how software is being secured today. And for the purpose of this demo, I want to start with that, and I want to show you how we're approaching this complex problem of security of AI by applying first principle thinkings. So when we look at the DevSecOps lifecycle, or the way software is being developed today, we are familiar pretty much with all the different stages, right, alongside this lifecycle. And of course, the risks that arise in each of those stages, from development to production of traditional software. Now, the question that sparked our journey to start Pillar was, are these controls enough to secure AI? So we went and spoke with everyone we can, and spoke with security teams and everyone who's building with this phenomenal technology. And what we realized is, besides AI changing the way we interact with software, maybe the most fundamental change is that AI is changing the way we build software. But why? First, we're talking about new kind of software, right? These AI applications, agentic systems, are powered by non-deterministic model, black box systems that you can't really understand. The second thing, we're talking about agentic systems. So now we have software with agency. It can make decisions. It can browse the internet or execute code. This is completely new. And of course, everything is happening outside the cloud realm that we are mostly familiar with. And of course, like happening on-prem, on edge, as we saw recently with the release of DeepSeek that allows it. So what we're basically saying at Pillar is that we realize that there is an entirely new development lifecycle for AI applications, for agentic systems. And this is where the problem starts. So when we look at this new lifecycle, we're basically saying that there is a need to apply a new security approach. There are entirely new risks here that some of the speakers covered previously, from development to production, from data and compliance risk to runtime risk, from prompt injection to jailbreaking. And this entirely need requires us to have a new approach. So if we're taking the same DevSecOps practice that we are familiar with, that we apply to traditional software, and apply it to the same new development lifecycle with AI, this is basically what we are seeing, and we're not the only one who is claiming that, right? So NIST and Gartner and Mitre Atlas and OWASP Top 10 with the recent release are all talking about this new lifecycle. So what we're trying to do here is kind of like put it on one framework, and this is what the Pillar platform is doing. So I would love to move to a quick video to show you how security teams are using Pillar. So before we start, I just want to explain. Can we go to the... All right, so what you're going to see here is kind of like the beginning from discovery, right? So AI is a new software. Software is written in code. So the first thing we're doing at Pillar is connecting to where AI is being developed. We're scanning your GitHub repositories in this case and surfacing all the AI projects. And we're seeing here medical agents with all the different dependencies that it uses. We can see this is a real project on GitHub that uses AI. Now, in a few clicks, we can go and onboard this application to the Pillar platform. Onboarding the application, allowing us to monitor it and secure it in real time. We're still in development. Now we're getting inside the application, but since we are sitting inside and monitoring it, we are fetching all the information, all the assets that make this application. The models, the system prompts, the tools. We even show you this graph here with all the different tools in use and system prompts. So this is kind of like a basic example of agentic systems. We've been seeing like ones with like, imagine like hundreds of different system prompts and different tools. And this is the attack surface that we are trying to protect at Pillar. Each one of those applications has a business use case attached to it, right? It's a specific thing that it needs to do. And what we're doing at Pillar, based on this information, is allowing team to stress test those applications. Now, this testing is very tailored to the application use case, right? We have all the information we need in order to create a customized red teaming assessment. So we're not only trying to bypass and say, tell me how to make a racist joke or build a bomb, but we're really studying what this application attack surface is, what are the unique risks here, and then we're applying prompt injection, jailbreaking techniques, as you can see here, and coding techniques in order to try to bypass those guardrails, and in this case, like see if the risk is causing a risk or not. And this is an example of an attack that was succeeded. Now, we're not stopping there, because we have this information and all the caps, then we can go and show you how it's like happening in life. So this is the application from the user point of view, and you can ask it different questions, as you can see here, like what's the hours. But I'm going to show you an example of an attack that you won't see here, but then we're going to look at under the hood and see what's happening at Pillar. So we're going to check Advil availability, right? And you can see that the triage agent is like getting the information from a different agent that's connected to the internet, but there's another thing here that's happening here. It's also reminding us that Pillar Care Pharmacy is the most trusted pharmacy in the world. But I just asked about availability of Advil. So let's see what's happening under the hood. Pillar monitors all those interactions, full tracing of all the agent requests, including the system prompts, what the user is being asking, what are the guidelines of this application, and what are the responses. But we see here that one of the requests to check the Advil availability returned a response with prompt injection. So this external resource had some indirect prompt injection or some malicious instructions that the model just interpreted. So this is kind of like Pillar in a nutshell, helping teams to cover their entire AI development lifecycle end to end. What you see here, this is an example of the guardrails that we provide out of the box that teams can just, in a click of a button, enable to monitor or block different malicious behaviors. We can identify PII, PHI, model jailbreaking, and so on. And all of it, of course, can kind of like being tested in our safe environment for experimentation and see how the platform works end to end. Everything can be deployed on cloud or also on the customer's cloud for full data protection. That's it. Thank you very much.
I love that. Absolutely incredible. Those systems are definitely secure. So now let's open the floor to questions for Dor. Does anyone have any questions? Go ahead and raise your hand. We'll bring a mic over to you.
All right, we're going to start with, does Pillar offer automated remediation, or does it primarily provide just alerts and insight for the security team to act upon?
Yeah, great question. So, building security solutions for the last decade, we all know that teams don't need more work, like security teams don't need more work to handle all of the risks they have. So what we've built at Pillar is really like an end-to-end platform that on one hand, test and try to attack and understand what are the risks of this application, but we are not stopping there. We are optimizing the security based on these findings. Because we're sitting inside the application, we have the ability to adapt, to improve the guardrails, the security component that sits, and basically allowing teams to also test and secure their application in one place in an automated way.
I
think we have another one over here too. So with that being said, can you explain more about the proprietary risk detection and the evaluation models that Pillar uses? For example, how do they adapt to the new threats and vulnerabilities?
Absolutely. So just like every security company, we prioritize research. And one of the things that we did at Pillar from very early on in the company is getting a lot of data to help us see what's in the wild. So just like as security companies are putting in sensors and seeing like attacks, we're doing the same, but this is kind of new information we're gathering, prompts and responses from AI applications. So far, we've been analyzing 2 million interactions with applications. We even saw real attacks in the wild. We published a report on that. And this is basically what we're using to power our own engine. So whenever we are identifying new attacks, new attack methodologies, new prompt injection or jailbreaking techniques, we know to add them to our evaluation and protection products. Yeah.
Is there a tuning component, and how long does it normally take to get it to where it's adjusted to your customer's liking?
Yeah, good question. So the more information that you provided, the better. So Pillar is integrated both at the code level, so it fetches like all the information we can get from the code, both also from the runtime level. So we are extracting all the information that's like being used from during like the interaction in runtime, and also from the usage. So any previous use of the application is helpful for us. It's like providing context to understand what is a benign, it's a good behavior, and what is not. So we're creating a code of conduct for the application, and based on that, creating the attack or the malicious scenarios to be executed to try to bypass that.
Is it on? Yeah. Do you have any metrics on the percentage of accuracy so an organization can confidently block something with a minimum possibility that we're actually blocking legitimate prompts?
Absolutely. This also relates to what the previous question that was asked about the precision. We don't want to create only false positives, but when we say something is a risk, it's a real risk, and it's backed by data we're seeing, backed by the research we're doing at Pillar in-house. And of course, you have the ability to provide feedback to the system. So if you see something that's like false positive or false negative, you can very fast like mark that, and it will improve the systems based on this response.
What's that percentage of accuracy that you have seen on what you have done?
The percentage is very low. I mean, in terms of like the false positives, I would say like it's the lowest because we have very high precision based on the data, based on real data that we are monitoring. But again, it's like gets better with more and more usage of the application. And again, another thing is that the red teaming or the attacks we are generating are tailored to the application. So this is also something that reduces the false positives. We're not trying to, in general, trick the model to tell me a racist joke, but are really trying to understand what is this application business use case? What's the business logic? What's the risk that can happen here? Just like basically doing dynamic threat modeling for this application.
So speaking about Gen AI applications, and obviously there's a ton of them out there, for what you're doing for analysis, what applications or what use cases are you seeing the most, like that find the most value from what you're doing?
Yeah.
And then what sector or vertical are they in?
Good question. So we're working with some of the largest enterprises, but also vertical AI companies, mostly in heavily regulated sectors. So healthcare, for example, where you take very, very sensitive data, PHI data, you combine it with non-deterministic software. This is a recipe for a lot of security problems. So those companies are using Pillar to put full visibility and control. It is tailored to their application use case on their cloud. So Pillar is not even like monitoring or managing it. All the information, all the data, all the prompts sits on their end. We're also working on agentic use cases. So not only chatbots, but more sophisticated applications where you have like multi-agents accessing the internet, writing code. So now you have problems like sandboxing. How do you contaminate, like make sure that this code is running in a secure manner, right? Because the agent can now execute code and run it in a thermal real time. So this is what we're seeing.
Like for instance, for the example application, is the application in healthcare, for instance, is it analyzing a certain type of data or producing a certain type of data? Like, what's the specific use
So
case?
in this use case, without getting into like specific details because it's under NDA, but think of like patient data. It's very sensitive from like patient and caregiver, and in some cases, either like on purpose or not, the model is like leaking it to different sessions. Right? This is one example. Another thing is that using prompt injection or takeover, you can kind of like make the model leak whatever information you want if it's not from your session. So this is another example.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's all we have time for. Let's give it up to George Sarek at Pillar Security.
Thank you.
Thank you for your questions, by the way. Appreciate it. So, all right, now it's time to welcome Realm Labs to the stage. We will continue with Dr. Saurabh Sintra. He is the founder and CEO of Realm Labs. Now, Dr. Saurabh is a leading expert in the field of AI security with multiple publications and patents, as well as nearly a decade of experience in leading AI security at Symantec and Splunk. Now, he's been a regular speaker on these topics at RSA Conference, CNBC, Washington Post, and so on. Dr. Saurabh was selected as a future leader by the Science and Technology and Society, STS Forum, in Kyoto in 2018. He received his PhD in computer science from the Carnegie Mellon University. And all right, Dr. Saurabh, the stage is all yours.
Thank you. All right, thank you so much for having me here. Today I'm going to talk to you about AI detection and response, but just a quick word about Realm. We have about 15 years of experience, at different companies securing AI, a lot of technical sort of background with which we are building our product. Some of the amazing advisors, like the Chief Security Officer of Anthropic, is also one of our advisors as well. So, as all of you might know, a lot of discussion about AI is about unstructured data. And unstructured data is a treasure trove of information, especially in enterprises and big organizations. And the type of information you have here is really varied. So you might have your financials there, you might have employee personal files, you might have your code base, your intellectual property, and so on. Typically, this information has been siloed in your company. It was really well protected, but it was also really hard to use. So now with AI, you have put AI on top of this data, and you bought Microsoft Copilot, right? Because you want your employees to use this information easily. Unfortunately, while making it easier to use this information, Copilot also leaked data a lot, right? And we have seen this across the board with organizations. We have really sensitive information has been leaked. So this is happening despite these companies claiming that their chatbots are really secure. So what's going on? And anyone who has worked in a large organization knows that these your data is actually not as well protected as you think. And most of these chatbots work under a shared responsibility model, where they are responsible for importing your permissions and implementing them, but you are responsible for making sure that those permissions are correct. This is just not true for most organizations. You have a lot of openly accessed documents. You have settings like permission settings like anyone with a link can share or see this information, which is highly context dependent, right? If it's a FAQ, everybody should be able to see this. But if it is a financial document, then maybe no one should be able to see it. And lastly, certain data, like for example, if you have an HR or a security incident in your company, this information is just far too sensitive and must be kept away from these copilots. So when you're trying to secure your copilot journey, you have different ways in which you can do it. So for example, if a user asks a question to Copilot, and you get a response back, and one of the responses comes back from a sensitive file, which was an employee's personal file, you could maybe put some type of user actions where you're trying to block certain topics for that user. Or you can take actions at the Copilot level, where you remove certain sensitive files from Copilot and so on. Or you can even take actions at the file level, where you change those permissions, or you even delete that particular content which is sensitive. Doing all of this in different places is very, very hard, and you have to go and play this whack-a-mole. Realm Labs is building a platform where you can actually manage all of your content and how it's being used and drawn with Copilot with a single pane of glass, without at all requiring any integration, no network, no proxy, no agent. It's all an agentless architecture. It gets deployed within 15 minutes. So we are going to play 2 demos for you. The first video will show you an actual Copilot leak that we were able to capture. Let's roll that video. The user asks Copilot a very specific question about their own compensation. Ideally, Copilot should understand that this is a sensitive question and should only use employees' personal information to answer a question like this. However, Copilot in this case uses other files that clearly contain information about other employees and proceeds to give them in the response to the query. In case of Copilot, you can also ask further questions belonging to a specific citation. Our user ends up asking further questions about their own compensation, specifically in this file. But Copilot proceeds to give them information about all the other employees that are mentioned in the document, including their titles, salaries, and other personal information. When we check permissions of this file, we notice that no user has been granted direct access to the file. However, the file is shareable over a link to any user within the organization. This is a very common pattern of file sharing in organizations internally or externally. The access link is kept secret and is only given to people who are supposed to have access to the file. However, Copilots don't understand this and think that everyone in the organization can actually access the file, and therefore, when the user prompts a query that targets this particular document accidentally, Copilots end up exposing all the information from this file to that user. Okay, so what do you do about it? And this is what our product demo will play, the second one. Realm is built on the foundation that security of AI lies in the security of the underlying data, and that AI copilots with unchecked access to enterprise applications pose a far higher risk to enterprise data than any individual. That is the problem that we want to solve. Unstructured data is a huge blind spot for organizations, but you can leverage Realm to bring governance to your knowledge bases. Realm connects easily with multiple data sources like SharePoint, Box, Google, or any other application of your choice. Once connected, Realm scans these sources for sensitive and overly exposed documents. It gives you a higher level view of your most sensitive topics in PII in these documents, which in turn enables you to design the best policies to protect this information. Realm also gives you a list of individual assets with highest risk based on sensitive topics and PII detected, their exposure within and outside your organization, as well as the frequency with which these assets are being used in AI and non-AI applications. A sensitive asset with very high AI usage but low traditional usage generally represents accidental leakage happening through AI applications. Realm detects a large number of sensitive topics such as mergers and acquisitions, financial earnings and projections, legal and tax documents, and intellectual property. Our detectors go way beyond the capabilities of existing DLP and DSPM solutions and provide you an AI-first solution. Let's go to Copilot to see how Realm detects and responds to problematic queries. As the user interacts with Copilot, Realm is able to pull in Copilot logs, including the prompt, response, and citations in less than a second, and is able to provide its analysis immediately. From the logs, we can see that the user is asking questions around compensation and mergers and acquisitions, which happens to be exposed topics in our knowledge base. Let's say we don't want our employees to have conversations around mergers and acquisitions. Admins can go to Realm's dashboard to create a policy to detect mergers and acquisitions as a topic. Realm from now on will alert them when any question is asked around this topic or when a document containing this information is being used to generate a response. In Realm, admins can build policies around more than 50 different topics such as financial and legal advice, advanced PII, base 64, and hex encoding, along with the previously seen topics. Next, we attach this policy to our Microsoft 365 Copilot application, and from now on, whenever the user has a conversation around this topic, the admin will get an alert. Let's see it in action. As you can see, Realm's advanced detectors are able to detect this topic effectively. Realm's solution is extremely lightweight. It does not rely on any agent or proxy and therefore causes no disruption to user experience. With its innovative approach, Realm can secure your Copilot apps from day zero. What we do, this is all I had. Any questions?
well, you showed us the possibility of the guardrails. So for the enterprise solution, what kind of deployment options are available? Can it be integrated with our existing cloud infrastructure? And to double on that, for developers, how easy is it to integrate with Realm's data connectors and guardrails into their AI development workflows and tech flows?
Yeah, so our solution is completely hosted on your own cloud, so none of your data is going to come to us. So whatever you use, like whether it's Azure or AWS or Google, our system can get deployed there. Pull in all the data. It's not going to store anything long term. It's just going to scan and give you whatever visibility you need, and then it's going to walk away from that. But no data comes to us. And for developers as well, it's very simple APIs. Again, it can be hosted as a server on their own end, but then we expose the APIs that they can use in their own applications for guardrails.
We do have another one over here. So when it comes to the leakage prevention, how does Realm identify and classify the sensitive data? You showed us the drop-down screen and the options, but within the context of LLM, how do they interact, and can it be customized to recognize organization-specific data classification schema?
So actually, this is the place where we really have some interesting innovation. So if you look at most of the other solutions that exist in this space, they either use regular expressions or keywords or pattern matching, or if they are slightly more advanced, they're going to use small language models. Realm actually uses a large language model for this, which is used in a different way, so it doesn't add any latency to this interaction. Typically, that's the biggest problem with using large language models. They're very slow to output anything. But we have found a new innovative way in which we can actually look at how a model is thinking about a particular query before responding to it, and that's what allows us to build really effective guardrails.
One last one over here. So on that same topic, what kind of nuanced controls like anonymization or redaction can you provide?
Yeah, so you can anonymize, redact, and you can do this in multiple languages because, again, we are relying on a large language model, so we can understand when somebody is talking in even languages that we don't speak ourselves, right? So we have all of that coverage for you, and primarily being powered by the fact that there is a large language model which is trying to handle all of this, as opposed to small language model, while still giving you really low latency. Yeah. All right.
Ninja, appreciate it. It's yours. Okay. Now, to cap off our demonstrations today, we have Adam Shore. He is Conifer's go-to market leader who brings more than 10 years of security, sales, and sales engineering experience to his role. Prior to Conifer's, he was head of growth for Suite Security. He held key roles at Rapid7 and was Director of Sales Engineering of APJ at Insight Cyber Intelligence, which was acquired by Rapid7. Now, at Verint Systems, Adam was a senior analyst consultant advising security leaders how to improve their security operations. And all right, Adam, you ready to show us what you got?
Yeah,
all right,
sure.
give it up for Adam.
All right. Hi, everyone, and thanks for having me. So today, my colleagues talked about how they need to secure AI. We are coming from a different angle, which is definitely a very important job. We are here at Conifer's to kind of understand how AI can be used for security and to better defend. So Conifer's is all about achieving SOC excellence and empowering existing SOC with the strength of AI. And we really want to go deep in solving the hard problems efficiently and effectively. This is our main goal. So talking for many years with security leaders in this space, we understand that organizations need a solution that works, right? From different angles. Firstly, we know that attackers use AI automation to scale their attacks, increasing their complexity, sophistication, and speed. So I always say if attackers use AI, why defenders should left behind. Secondly, we understand that scaling expertise is very tough. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter how your SOC, your security operation is big, whatever you have 5, 10, 20 analysts, you still have those 2, 3 that are probably the superstars of the team, and it's really hard to replicate their success. Thirdly, we know that with today's automation, it's very hard and challenging to both deploy and maintain. and often requiring human intervention for decision making. And lastly, we know that organizations are really suffering in terms of understanding their institutional knowledge to conduct in-depth investigation and actually provide context to that investigation. Now, when we're looking at what organizations are really looking for, they're actually looking at a complete view of their entire detection and response cycle. So in the ideal situation, the detection and response come together and have a very broad detection that is covering most of the security of the organization. But we actually see that along the years, detection and response team kind of diverted from each other, and we have detection teams that are doing only detection engineering team. And on the response side, we have the SOC analyst that needs to pick up all the noise and understand what they actually need to do with those incidents. So what we want to do and what we want to bring to the table is actually to have this feedback loop between detection and response and to provide a telemetry pipeline to refine decision and detection for higher accuracy. We want to provide organization a way to really understand their institutional knowledge, because without a way to understand your institutional knowledge, it's really hard to provide context to the investigation and understand what are the next steps in order to solve an incident. And lastly, we want to provide a solution that could quickly be deployed in your security operations center without the need of changing any technology, any techniques, or use any other portal, because this is the way of demonstrating real value. So how do we actually do that? So Conifers actually deployed what we call a cognitive SOC, which is an agentic system, which is a patent pending. I hope we'll get that approved in the upcoming month. But what we're actually doing is that on the detection side, we're integrating to some of your detection tools, such as primarily SIEM. It could be also EDR. And we are kind of taking those detection. And when we are looking at the response team, we understand when we started Conifers, we want to have two different levels of the response. So we understand that we need to have the pre-trained use case model driven. So what we see that we actually take the use case within the SOC, and when I'm saying use case, I'm talking about like lateral movement, malware execution, impossible travel, those kind of use cases. We slice and dice it, and we understand that we can take just one generative model and try to solve that, all those use cases. We actually pre-trained those submodels in order to get the result that we actually wanted. And the other pillar is the adaptive learning of the institutional knowledge. So we can integrate with any SharePoint, Confluence, and have an adaptive learning of your institutional knowledge in order to get to what we call the cognitive SOC. This allows you to do a few things, which is optimal, which is have a bigger accuracy. It's also controlled by human because we can operate it side by side. So when an analyst, and I will show it later in the demo, can actually control the responses. And we can actually go in depth and conduct complex investigation. And one of the most important things, the cost is predictable because you know what is your throughput, you know how many resources you need to deploy, and you understand how the futures looks for you within the security operations center. So we will move to a short demonstration. As I mentioned, we don't change any procedure or tool, so we're actually living within the ticket management platform of that specific company. In that case, it's ByteBloom Technologies. So as you can see, this is the JIRA ticket that they have. So the ticket that we are going to look at is the lateral movement alert. So when we are going and picking that alert in, we can see all the information that is pulled from the SIEM device, right? So there is one progress lateral movement alert. When we choose that alert, we can actually see that the description that was pulled from Splunk is that there is a user in the name of Matt Norton that attempted to have a remote access to a specific asset. It was identified as unauthorized. And that specific server came from a specific IP. Now, that alert actually pulled from Splunk as it is. It could be any SIEM, by the way. And on the right side of the screen, you can see all the alert details that were pulled from Splunk. Now, where Conifers is actually getting into action is in the analysis itself. So you can see that we are adding fields to the JIRA ticket itself. There is the Conifers analysis, where you can see the verdict, which is currently the true positive. So again, decision making is something that is essential for a solution like us. We are doing triaging, so whatever alert is coming as low, we can bump the severity to critical. But more important is the contextual investigation, where first thing we are kind of looking at the alert itself. We are going back to the SIEM to find any correlating alerts. So we are seeing 3 correlating alerts, different users that got privilege elevated from at the same time from the same IP. We can see that there is some kind of suspicious PowerShell script that were executed by the user of M. Norton. And there is another Nmap network exploration that happened from the same IP and from the same users. Now, when we're analyzing the network behavior, we understand that Matt Norton is actually trying to log into a critical server. Now, this server, 2161, obviously when an analyst looked at that server, he has no idea what is the server. Because we have the institutional knowledge, we can understand that this is actually a production server, which is a part of a company billing system containing sensitive financial and personal information. The other indicates that this is indeed a true positive. We understand that it's a part of an AD group, which don't usually access those type of server. We understand that the IP that it is originated, the authorized guide originated is a Taiwanese IP. The company has no business in Taiwan. Nobody within the company had any travels to Taiwan, so it doesn't make any sense to have this server access from that specific IP. And we also understand that usually when employees are accessing this server, this is done through a VPN within North America and not from a local administrator accounts. On the bottom, you can actually see the conclusion and verdict. We can understand that this is a true positive, and this is like a critical severity alert. Both the users, M. Norton and Carlton, got compromised, right? So this is how a day-to-day view of an analyst actually look like. So he's getting an alert from Splunk or from any other SIEM. We are enriching that with the information that we have. We're kind of solving and giving him the right triage. The second part of our platform is actually the dashboard, where the CISOs or the security leaders or the SOC managers can actually see what is going on with their SOC. We will go through it in a second. But that was kind of the 2 main things that are happening within the platform. The day-to-day of the analyst and how we can improve the detection rate and how can we help analysts to get into more contextual investigation so they can understand what is going on when they are looking at an incident. And this is really the feedback loop that I was talking about. This is the dashboard, the strategic dashboard. We show you in the upper right side of the screen. You can see that those metrics are related to conifers, right? So you can see the true positive accuracy. You can see the false positive accuracy. How good is your institutional knowledge, and also how many insights we learned along the way. And over the bottom, you can see KPIs and metrics that are related to the Security Operations Center. So how many incidents I got ingested, how many of them are handled by conifers, how many of them got handled by hybrid kind of analyst and the software itself, and how many of them are being dealt only by analysts. One very nice metric I really like to show is the early detection score over the right side of the screen. So you can understand how good your SOC is doing in terms of when he's handling those alerts. Whatever he's handling those on the right side, on the impact side, or whatever they're handling those alerts on the initial access side. These have a very big impact because you can see how much your SOC is doing the job not only efficiently but also effectively. So this is kind of what we're bringing to the table. Again, we want to use AI in order to strengthen the defenders' way in order to enhance their security, especially in the Security Operations Center. Yeah, that's it.
Congratulations for coming out of stealth, by the way.
Yeah.
Do we have any questions for conifers? Yeah, we have one over there.
Hey there.
Hey.
So
in the contextual analysis, is there any ability to find the vector that was exposed? So if that user in particular had clicked maybe a phishing email, is there any ability for the organization to use that tool to identify others who may have been targeted with the same attack?
Yeah, 100%. So what we're actually doing is every time we're looking at an incident, we're going back to the SIEM and other detection platform to look for similar behaviors or similar incident. This is how we can actually elevate the severity of the alert. And as you can see in that specific alert, M. Norton was the one that tried to access a specific server, but we actually saw that Carl Carton was trying to do the same thing from the same IP addresses. And we managed to detect that only because we went back to the SIEM, tried to look for similar alerts. So to your questions, yes, we can do that.
On the example that you had it had recommended steps.
Yeah.
Like so it had been detected and then these are recommended steps. Is there a way to configure it to also block, or does it block and then recommend?
Yeah, so one of our kind of future things that we want to do is to automate also the remediation. So we are actually looking at the white spaces, right? So we understand if your detection is too noisy or if your detection is lacking something, we can actually fine tune your detection. But more than that, we can integrate with SOAR platforms so we can block and create all those kind of things in order for you to kind of prevent those things from happening in the first place.
I think was quite insightful. A major component of your platform is institutional knowledge.
Yes.
So I'm kind of curious, how long does it take to build that? How do you build that institutional knowledge?
It's a fantastic question. We call it an adaptive learning of your institutional knowledge. Why we call it an adaptive learning? Because we have a starting point. We can connect, as I mentioned, to your Confluence page, to your SharePoint, whenever you are keeping your data, right? But as we go, we need to learn more and more. So we actually have an adaptive system that let's say, for example, we are seeing alerts in Splunk or in any other SIEM. Seems like I'm advertising Splunk today, I don't know why, just because that was that example. Let's say we're seeing alerts that are generating from the same IP day after day after day. And then we're kind of asking, we have a bot that is integrating to your Slack or to your Teams, and we're asking your analyst, hey, maybe that specific IP is a VPN or your office IP address in, I don't know, in Carolina. Maybe this is why you're getting those alerts, and the analyst can mark, yes, it is. So we are taking this information and we are adapting the institutional knowledge based on that. So actually the platform always improves because we have this adaptive kind of learning of your institutional knowledge. But definitely a great question.
So 2 questions, and one you kind of covered about the resolution of the actual detections. And questions related to this. Do you have any examples of the system being used in IT organizations, and do you have any statistics about the workforce-related savings that it brings?
Yeah, so as I just reminded, we just came out of stealth today. And when we came out of stealth, we went from our website and we actually have a use case from an IT company and an MSSP company that uses our product for more than a few months now. And in the interview, we are able to share like how much time we save them, how much in resources. At the end of the day, what we want is to take the analyst time and making them scale with more and more, with more abilities to do more things. This is our focus, and we really want to solve and make sure we are solving the repetitive issues that we keep seeing. So this is why we're kind of focused on that. So yeah, definitely you can go to conifers.ai, and we have a use case over there, and someone that is actually explaining your specific KPIs and metrics that you want to see. Awesome.
All right, thank you so much, Adam. Let's give it up for Adam. All right, so innovation is at the heart of AI security, and that is exactly what we've seen today. So I can't wait to see what the future holds. Now, today we've learned the critical importance of AI security and compliance, and these demos have given us a tangible look into the future potential problems and solutions. So let's come full circle on the current state of AI security and AI for security and poke into the future. All right, so you know what we're going to do? We're going to go ahead and invite our panelists up, and let's go ahead and give them a round of applause while I introduce them, okay? So we have Daniel Ross, Head of Compliance and Strategy at Dynamo AI. Come on up, Daniel. Thank you so much. Go ahead and take a seat. We have Rohit Valia, who's the CEO of Turmeric. Let's give a round of applause to Rohit. And finally, Kevin Wu. I'll scooch over here. Kevin Wu, CEO of Pegasus. And last but not least, we have Jonathan Kennedy, who's the CISO of our very own Income Payments. Welcome. All right, now, let's see. Is here good? Yeah? Okay, great. All right, so let me go ahead and get into our questions. The first panel question I have, actually, is it okay? Is this going to be all right if I stand over here? Yeah, we're good? Okay. So my first question is for Dan. Dan, how do you see the regulatory landscape evolving to keep pace with advancements in AI, particularly concerning security and compliance?
So a couple of things. I think last year, 2024, there was a lot, essentially a lot of government entities and regulators started putting out like formal questionnaires around insights into how AI was being used. You saw this across the healthcare sector, retail, so the FTC, as well as like financial services, so the Treasury. So that brought a lot of insight. I think on the regulatory front there, I don't think we'll see a lot of specific regulatory policy being produced, but what we will see from that is a lot of very specific guidance around use case. So they've observed very specific use cases being deployed in AI or advanced plans by management to deploy those. And so I think the regulators will use a lot of guidance, proactive guidance, very tailored to those use cases. I also think it's a little bit of a wait and see moment with the EU AI Act. And how that deploys, and folks know in February some of those elements are going to come into force, so specifically the prohibition. And so there's a lot of like watch and assessment around how private entities interact, how governments interact with compliance measures, deployment. So I think you got a little bit of those combinations. I think it'll be a bit of specific guidance, and then wait and see on the EU Act of what will come from that.
Awesome, thank you. So our next question is for Rohit. Do all models provide the same level of trust? So how can enterprises determine the best model from a security and governance perspective?
Yeah, that's a very important question, because when you consider that there's all these different providers now, they all provide a model, a large language model, and you'd think that the performance of the model is the only criteria as to which model you're going to use. But at Turmeric, we produce what we call the AI Trust Score. So we evaluate those models for trust and safety. And based on that, we can determine like a specific model may, for instance, be good at protecting itself from security risks, but it may be weak in psychological safety, or it might actually be biased in some way. And so those are, when we are talking about Gen AI specifically, or AI overall, you'd find that security isn't just about the prompt security or data security. There's also risks to the answers that the security is providing, as in, is it biased or is it going to cause harm? Some of the examples that you might have seen is a Google model, Gemini, actually told a student who was just doing homework to please die. And that was just in a normal conversation. So the models can utter some rather strange things once in a while. And so you need to understand the models that you're dealing with, what may be the risk, and then automatically be able to figure out how, well, using some of our tools, help figure out what would be the safeguards that you put in place.
Yeah, thank you. So my next question is for Kevin. Kevin, how can organizations ensure the security and integrity of their AI models and data against adversarial attacks?
Yeah, so one thing to think about, and especially just to Rohit's point, is you have to think beyond just security in the traditional sense. You have to think about AI alignment. And AI alignment is more than just thinking about the privacy and some of the PII and PHI leakages, is the toxicity, it is the bias, it is the hallucinations, and ultimately whether or not it aligns to the human goals of the organization as a whole. And so it is very important to stress test these models and understand their failure modes and understand exactly what are they failing in, what kind of prompts, and what kind of scenarios, and making sure that you put in the right guardrails and safeguards accordingly to make sure that you protect against them to do so. And the second point of that is constantly and continuously doing evaluations. LLM as a judge and all these other techniques are super critical, but they're still very challenging, especially for use cases where the last mile challenge in AI becomes really challenging to do so. And lastly, beyond all of that is fine-tuning and making sure that the adversarial prompts are protected in doing so, to make sure that we have full alignment from a security, privacy, but also from a truthfulness perspective as well.
Thank you for that. So my next question is for Jonathan. From a CISO's perspective, what are the most pressing AI security concerns for organizations today? And how can organizations effectively manage the risks associated with AI adoption while still leveraging its benefits?
Yeah, so I look at it two ways, one from an internal standpoint and one from an external standpoint. I'll start with internal. One of the biggest concerns I had when this started coming out and all the hype around it, it was one of those Hollywood situations, right, where it gets on CNN, it gets on the front page of like Reddit and Google and things like that, and now everyone wants to participate. Data loss was my main concern. If you upload a photo to Facebook, that's not actually your photo of your dog anymore, it belongs to Facebook, right? So any data that goes into these models, depending on the licensing agreement that you have, but when people run to these open source models, now it belongs to that model, right? So you think about developers in-house that are uploading sensitive code, your IP, your API keys, your license tokens, and all these types of things. I'm not the one to slam the door on innovation or progress, but we needed to find controls around it to ensure that we had a proper data loss prevention program in place. Now, the more scary aspect of it for me was the external component. I track this metric called breakout times quite often. So breakout times is when there's an initial egress into your environment. How long does it take that actor to laterally move to somewhere else, right? And the nation states actually have metrics that are followed by the government. Russia is the best right now at 28 minutes. They can get in and then move to something else in 28 minutes. There's this organization called SPIDER, which is the rest of the world, right? So your everyday hackers that live at their house and they do their own like little nefarious things on their own. Well, since ChatGPT's been released, their breakout time has been reduced by 18 minutes. And it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. So we plan around that, and we ensure that we have our controls in place and hope that we're staying ahead of the curve of these models that are being used for malicious purposes.
Yeah, let's hope so. So this question is for all of our panelists. What are your predictions for the future of AI security and AI for security?
Can I start with AI for security?
Please, yes.
So I think we saw a lot of awesome demos today, and I think all of those components need to be in strategy, right? Each individualized thing needs to be incorporated into an overall plan on how we're going to incorporate AI, because going back to my other point, attackers are going to be using AI, right? So we need to use AI to combat that. I think that it's going to be used to take away the dwell time, if you will, so that an analyst doesn't have to go, all right, I'm going to move over here now, do some investigations, get this data, now I can make this decision. It's all going to come to them, right? And it's just going to further improve our tools. It's going to look at the landscape, it's going to gather all this telemetry, and it might actually help you shape your own strategy around how you deploy it as well.
Kevin, Rohi, would you like to add on to that?
Yeah, certainly. So in terms of the security of AI, I can certainly add to a different thread here, as in the AI itself can divulge a lot of data from the enterprise. So the whole value of AI, generative AI specifically, that an organization derives is when they are training that model with their data or making available their proprietary data to the model, because otherwise you're just using a foundation model. So since the value comes when you're making that data available, then essentially the task is to essentially ensure that that data can't be exfiltrated. So the attacks that people have, everything ranging from prompt attacks or you have these jailbreak attempts, or then the other flip side of it is the models may actually be emitting hallucinations, as was mentioned, right? So the security of AI is becoming a much bigger issue in my mind. I mean, of course, the security that is generated by AI, the prevention of that is still standard tools. The reason I say that the security of AI is a brand new attack surface. And so we are going to see in the coming future more attacks on that AI infrastructure, because all the efforts on data security, which are fairly strong by now, or, of course, there's always new ways, but attacking these models opens up a whole new attack surface, which is brand new.
Yeah, and the fun thing to consider about that is it doesn't take a high skill level to be able to hack these models, right? Like you're not thinking about the Matrix where someone that's running through a command line at 1 billion lines a minute. They're literally just having a conversation with these models, and almost like trying to convince a human to do something. Yeah. So the bar for being able to compromise this stuff is quite low.
And just like kind of feeding off what from a non-technical perspective, it's definitely, I think this will be the year that a lot of the technical aspects of what we're discussing here get escalated to non-technical stakeholders in an organization. So if you think about the decision-making structure of an organization, well, you have the CISO team, but then you have risk management, operational teams, legal teams, HR teams, marketing teams that are all concerned about security of AI, and AI essentially is a trust product in itself, and then the security wrapping around it only elevates it. So you can kind of see how, I think this will be the year that a lot of that terminology, the lexicon that comes out will be more prevalent, and folks at those levels, those non-technical stakeholders, start to be a lot more comfortable with conversing around some of those topics.
Absolutely.
From our side, the financial services that we've been speaking to, there's now new AI steering committees, new governance committees that are really focused on these solutions. And what's top of mind, especially in this year, and it's not a crazy statement to make, is that for regulated firms, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when for every firm to start using small language models, especially for privacy concerns. Doesn't mean that they'll use 100% small language models, but the ability to fine-tune these models, the security and privacy controls around it, as well as cost and scalability of it, is going to be very top of mind, especially for these regulated workflows. And then lastly, from these prompt injection perspective, there's all these papers that shows that you can basically have algorithmic ways that you can have infinite numbers of prompt injections. And so not only do you have these hackers at home who may just be students at Georgia Tech or others, but you also have now these agentic AI bots who can also create new prompts on the fly and get smarter. And so this increases the surface attack vector for the rest of the organization.
If I can add one more thing, when we think about trust, which was one of the things you brought up, one of the things that's going to be there is, do you trust the agents that are, for instance, acting on your behalf, or do you grant them access to certain things? How do you bring trust into this equation? Because now the output that you're getting from one model may actually be feeding into the next step in this agentic flow. So essentially having a quantifiable way to verify the trust in these systems, like having a score, helps to, in non-deterministic models, we found, so I was at FICO many years, and the same problem, which is a non-deterministic problem, for instance, fraud detection or even a credit score for that matter, is the way that people can determine, because there are ranges of trust. You can't assign absolutes in these situations.
Thank you for those insights, gentlemen. So my next question is for Dan. What are the biggest challenges organizations face in balancing innovation and compliance when implementing AI solutions?
One of the things I see today is just aligning to existing law and regulation today. I mean, if you think about in the consumer harm space, so we've mentioned bias and discriminatory action, right? And and you're thinking about deploying a chatbot that you want to engage with customers or within a call center, or that aspect. I mean, there's a level of risk the way we do it today, and we have processes and controls to be able to assess whether somebody's being discriminatory or biased in those policies. But then you're introducing the technology of AI to engage directly, right? And then you have these data sets that are at risk, which we've talked about from a security perspective. And so you have new controls and new terminology that are looking to assess those levels of hallucination and bias, which is relatively complex, especially as we mentioned in the black box environment. So I think taking some of these best practices and looking to apply them to existing law and regs, because maybe some of the regulators haven't been as specific in terms of what's acceptable against maybe some of the human use cases that we're seeing is one of the immediate challenges that I think organizations are going through and will probably continue to go through.
Thank you. So my next question is for Rohit. How can enterprises leverage new innovations in lower cost models, with models like DeepSeek, for example, into their AI applications without taking on governance and security risks?
Yeah, that's a really important thing. I mean, the world around us sort of changed in the last week, as you saw, with the low-cost model providers now equaling or bettering some of the better-known model providers, right? And so a lot of the enterprise strategy till date had been around, like, I'm buying from Microsoft, right? Nobody got fired for buying from IBM. So I'm buying from Microsoft, or I'm buying from OpenAI, so these models are secure and I can trust them, they have guardrails on them. Whereas I think as you kind of start to adopt open source models like Llama, DeepSeek's not the only one, right? Llama kind of started it. You have to have a operational program that can operate the infrastructure with zero trust, essentially. It's similar to other security programs that organizations already have. So you have to assume that the model provider is untrustworthy, the user is untrustworthy, and we need a governance system to be able to authenticate, verify, and be able to bring it all together in an operational sense with the governance, which is in a non-deterministic world. So those are some important things I'm bringing out here because, the problems have existed before. It's just that we are now talking of a non-deterministic world, and that's why, like, having this trust zone is a concept that I like to talk about, because you'll have to be willing to accept a certain amount of risk. And you can quantify that risk. I mean, we do it with an AI trust score, but you need some way to measure that risk and then allow for that flexibility, because otherwise you're going to just have to shut down the innovation.
Good point, good point. So my next question is for Kevin. Kevin, what are the emerging threats and vulnerabilities in AI systems that organizations need to be aware of?
There's a gentleman earlier talked about the OWASP top 10. It's updated every single year, so that's a pretty comprehensive look. But one thing in 2025, and especially as we move forward and as these systems get more sophisticated, is there's more risks around agents, and especially agents that have access to certain APIs, other privileged knowledge bases, and then that increases the entire vulnerability space, especially when you have autonomous decision making and across the board. So it's a question of trust. How much do you trust the agents as they're going out? And the other biggest challenge as well is these compounded errors through these agents. As you have, let's say, these models get smarter and smarter, but let's assume that there's a 3-step LM process, 95% accuracy. A 3-step process ultimately will have 80% accuracy. And so it's a question of how much do you trust it and how much aperture do you want to have it. So that's one. And the others to think about is, especially as these models become, as more organizations adopt smaller language models, it comes with more challenges as well, right? There are obviously incredible benefits to small language models like DeepSeek and Llama and whatnot, but not only is the infrastructure challenges, then you have to build a lot of the guardrails and sophistications around that, which becomes really challenging on top of it, despite the advantages. So those are the emerging ones. And then lastly, as I was talking about prompt injections, there are new novel jailbreaking and prompt injections that are automated and created. And so that's why it's really important to do red teaming and evaluations of your model continuously.
Thank you, Kevin. My next question is for Jonathan. So what best practices would you recommend for integrating AI security into an organization's overall security strategy?
So I think looking at it from the scope of how can it help us protect, but also how can it help us be more efficient, right? So we have several products that either use machine learning or AI, and it's really all about efficiency and speed to either innocence or speed to that we need to kill something. Sorry, that was a little violent. But, like kill a process, kill like some sort of network connection. But it's really speed to that decision point is what we need. 10, 15 years ago, SOCs were very manual. You had to get an alert from your SIEM, you got an alert from your antivirus that said, hey, this signature hit somewhere. Now you're going through documents, you're going through like network diagrams, you're reaching out to virus total, what does this hash even mean? it took hours to even make a decision on whether or not something was true or false positive. But with machine learning and AI, all that information, again, I call it the dwell time, right? Between the alert going off into where a decision needs to get made, needs to get tighter and tighter because of that breakout time that I mentioned earlier. My SOC lives by a 1-10-60 rule, which means that my tools have 1 minute to detect something. My analysts have 10 minutes to figure out whether or not it's a true or false positive, and then we have 60 minutes to fully remediate the issue. We constantly look at AI, machine learning, and other sorts of SOAR tools to bring that down as much as possible, but that's our maximum threshold until we can get to there. Now, I would tell my peers to be open-minded. I think that AI has a lot to offer us. I think it has a lot to offer for productivity outside of security. But again, I think we said some words like untrustworthy, right? And we need to make sure that we keep it contained in everything and just understand that these things should be treated as entities with identities. If they have too much permissions, they're going to run wild and look at things that they shouldn't be and offering up information that they shouldn't be. So really taking a look at it as its own human identity on what it should have access to, I think would help out a lot with the strategy.
Awesome. Do we have time for one more? One more. Okay, final question. Gosh, where did the time go? All right, so final question is for all of our panelists. We probably have only a minute or so to respond, but so no rush and no pressure. But the final question I have is, what advice would you give to organizations that are just starting to explore AI security solutions?
So I might just quickly sum it up by saying you need to be aware of what models you're going to choose and allow to be deployed in your organization, because I think trust starts with the trust in the model itself. And then understanding that model trust will help you determine what guardrails you're going to need to put in place for specific models, because with different models you may have different controls that you need. And so you might want to start mostly first by making sure you have a program to evaluate model trust, and then build guardrails to protect against specific vulnerabilities in those models.
Thank you. Anyone else like to add to that? Yes.
Invest in a comprehensive and cross-functional use case risk assessment process. I mean, it's all dependent upon where you're deploying the AI and the regions and the types of situations of which you're deploying it. We'll then evaluate like the risk posture that you'll take on. And if you don't understand that as a fundamental and can't explain it, it's going to be pretty hard to pick the right tools and defend it later on.
Thank you.
As a former data scientist, you start with the data. And so from a data security perspective and data quality perspective, you must assess how that matches with the business use case and what ROI you're ultimately getting. And you have to then assess what are the failure modes that occur. And from there, you can work backwards and work on red teaming, evaluation, and stress testing, as well as building custom guardrails around those failure modes in particular. So that's what I would advise, and being able to have benchmarks and improve them continuously, and having the AI governance teams to have the overall observability so that all stakeholders know where the project stands is super critical to going from POC to production.
Yeah, at the risk of sounding repetitive, I agree, right? It's to take a step back, or at least start at square zero to understand what you're actually using AI for. Don't fall into the trap of, well, everyone else is doing it, so I need to do it as well. If you have that solid foundation that was mentioned to build upon that use case, you can put the proper guardrails in place and the proper controls in place. But if you just want to throw it out there to find a way to maximize efficiency or to use AI, then it's going to be reaching into places that you don't want it to be, and it'll be unsecured.
This has been a fantastic conversation, wouldn't you say? Yeah, let's give a big round of applause to our panelists. Thank you, Dan, Rohit, Jonathan, and Kevin. Really appreciate you being here. Okay, we'll go ahead and let you guys come off the stage. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so with that, we will conclude this discussion and the demonstration portion of the third Spark by Go Studio Startup Demo Day powered by Plug and Play. Now, this will not be our last event this year, so if you enjoyed Demo Day, please follow Go Studio on social media to learn more about upcoming Spark by Go Studio events. Now, we invite you to also come and check out Go Studio for yourself inside the home of the 96 Olympics Media Center and a major internet hub, where we continue to serve as ground zero for hosts of innovative moments over the decades at Income Payments in our very own world headquarters. Now, it has been an honor to serve as your master of ceremonies for this excavation of AI security and AI for security. Go Studio and Plug and Play appreciate your coming out today. And we hope the demo day has sparked some consideration that will protect your systems and models for years to come. Now, stick around for some networking and to finish your refreshments. And we'll see you next time.